Recording in progress.
Good evening, colleagues. Welcome to a regularly scheduled meeting of the Newton City Council. We're going to start off with the Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilor Kelly. Allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America,
It's America.
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone. We are being both audio taped and videotaped this evening. I have a relatively full complement here in the chamber, but online I have Councilors Downs, Vice President Kalis, Wright, and Humphrey. And I think that covers it. Let me briefly explain what we're going to be doing this evening because it's a little bit different than our normal procedure. We are going to go ahead and first call with the normal first call of our items, including assigning some public hearings. We are then going to take a recess, and the recess is so that the Programs and Services Committee, chaired by Vice Chair Humphrey, can meet in this room or online on the screen to have a meeting to take up a very time-sensitive item regarding a home rule petition relating to our police chief search. Once Programs and Services Committee finishes its work, we'll come back for second call. We have 3 items on second call, plus what I expect will be the item coming out of Programs and Services. So with that said, I'm going to start with Chair Kelly for the Land Use Committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Land Use Committee met on October 7th. This is on page 230 of your reports docket. The first item we took up was item 156-25, which actually is on second call. So skip that. We'll get to that later. The next one, number 220-25, a request to allow 3 attached single-family dwellings with dimensional relief at 16-20 Winter Street. That was approved 8-0. The next 2 items were held. Next, we did item 277-25, a request to extend the non-conforming rear setback at 30 Kingsbury Road, and that was approved 8-0. And I do have some public hearings I would like.
Please go ahead and assign the
Thank
public
you.
hearings.
I'd like to set public hearings for items number 307-25, 306-25, 305-25, and 304-25 for October 21st, and these are found on page 242. Also, for items 311-25, 310-25, and 309-25 for October 28th, and those are found on pages 242 and 243. And that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Kelly. I have Chair Baker for the Zoning and Planning Committee, please.
Good evening, and thank you, Mr. President. The Zoning and Planning Committee report begins on page 232. And I'm going to try and take you through this, and because there are a couple of edits to the actual report that's on your desk, which is in turn edited from what was in the packet. So I want to just be clear. The first item is 18124. That's a request for discussion and possible amendments to remove or reduce parking minimums for commercial uses in commercial centers. And then 18124-2, which has the same title, but the difference between the two is that we divided these items in committee into a parens 1 and a parens 2 effectively. One is going to deal with BU1 rather than B1 and B2 districts, and the other deals with the table so that they will be heard together on, and I'd ask for a public hearing. The committee voted for November 10th, but they can be voted separately because they're separate versions of response to the same issue. So the what you have on your desk should be corrected to indicate the request for a public hearing, and also we set a public hearing in committee, but for the 10th, and to change the B1 to BU1 and B2 to BU2. Otherwise, they're the same. Then for action items, on the page 233, 26625, appointment of Christopher Seal to the Economic Development Commission was approved 7-0. Item 2625 is on second call. Item 2125, reappointment of Robert Imperato to the Chestnut Hill Historic District Commission, approved 8-0. Item 29225, reappointment of Susanna Lennick to the Chestnut Hill Historic District Commission, approved 8-0. Number 29325, request amendments to Chapter 30 zoning. That item was held, but a public hearing we'd like to have on November 10th. Then 29425, going on to page 234, the reappointment of Scott Aquilina to the Chestnut Hills Historic District Commission, approved 8-0. 29625, reappointment of Charles Eisenberg to the Zoning Board of Appeals, approved 8-0. 29725, a reappointment of Deb Crosley to the Zoning Board of Appeals, approved 8-0. 29825, reappointment of Lee Gilligan to the Conservation Commission, approved 8-0. And 325, reappointment of Rick Wetmore to the Chestnut Hill Historic District Commission, approved 8-0. So that's the report. Thank you.
And Counselor Baker, do you want to formally assign the hearings?
Yes, if we could, I'd like to vote, the council to vote to assign the public hearings on the two parking items I mentioned earlier, and then also the one about the adult daycare use for November 10th.
Great, thank you very much. Programs and Services Committee, I do not have Chair Krinsman with us tonight, but I have Vice Chair Humphrey.
Thank you. So the report begins on page 236. This is for the October 8th meeting. We begin with item 248-25, reappointment of Randall Johnson to the Parks and Recreation Commission. This was approved 7-0. Item 250-25, reappointment of Marjorie Butler to the Newton Election Commission. We did actually have her come in and speak to us in the meeting and discussed about the 2022 election results issue again. This was approved 6-0-1. 275-25 was the request to set the salary for the city clerk / clerk of the city council. This was approved 6-0-1 in that committee. Item 283-25, appointment of Eric Hillman to the Council on Aging, was approved 6-0. Item 285-25, appointment of John Pelletier to the Council on Aging, was approved 7-0. Item 286-25, appointment of Robert Pearson to the Council on Aging, was approved 7-0. Item 289-25, appointment of Judith Gordon to the Council on Aging, was approved 7-0. And then finally, item 35-25, discussion about possible responses to reduced federal funding for Newton Public Schools, which we had with the superintendent and her team. We voted no action necessary 7-0, but that was a good discussion that you might want to check out if you missed it, in terms of what to do about the unknown unknowns if there are further federal cuts that could affect program funding for the Newton Public Schools. And those are the report items, but I would, if possible, like to request a couple of late filed items be admitted to the docket. So I would need a suspension of the rules.
Motion for suspension of rules to allow a couple of late filed items. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Go ahead, please, Councilor Humphrey.
Yes, so these are two different ones. One of them is 314-25, and that is requesting a home rule petition, but that's not the one we're planning to take up tonight. That's about newspaper publishing of hearing dates. That'll be dealt with separately, I believe. And then 315-25, requesting a reaffirming of a home rule petition. This is from an earlier home rule petition in a prior council. That's the one related to the police department hiring. And we are hoping to take that up shortly after first call in a separate meeting by Programs and Services Committee that I will be chairing.
Thank you, Vice Chair Humphrey. Next, I have Chair Grossman for Public Safety and Transportation, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. The report begins on page 237. The committee met on October 8th The first item, 123-24, requesting a regular discussion with the police department, was held 4-0. 124-24, requesting a discussion with the fire department, was held 4-0. 152-24, requesting a discussion with the police on body cameras in the Newton Police Department, was voted no action necessary, 4-0. Item 276-25, requesting a new public auto license, was approved 4-0. And 282-25, requesting 6 renewal bus licenses for Mass General Brigham, was approved 4-0. A quick note to committee members that our upcoming meeting begins at 8 p.m. on Wednesday. The reason for that decision was twofold. Public facilities will be taking up the new pedestrian and bike plan on Wednesday evening, and we were looking to structure our meeting so we could either take up our items first and have them take up the plan towards the end of their meeting. But as it turned out, the representatives from the administration that we need for our items before us aren't available till 8 p.m. anyway. So our hope is that everyone will have the opportunity from 7 to 8 p.m. to join the public facilities meeting and hear about the plan, and then come to us at 8 o'clock to take up our items. Thanks.
Great. Thank you very much, Chair Grossman. Next, Chair Albright for Public Facilities, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Both items that we discussed the other night were held, so that there's nothing to report out from them. But I urge you all to have a listen to those, to that meeting, because it was all about stormwater and groundwater. Jennifer Steele did a presentation for us, and it was extremely informative. So have a listen to that. At the second part of the series is happening this Wednesday night, where DPW will come and talk about groundwater and stormwater from their perspective. So that might be a fun listen as well. I also need a suspension of the rules to accept a late file item.
All right, all in favor of suspension of rules to allow a late file item, please say aye.
Aye.
Go ahead, please, Counselor Albright.
So the item is 317-25, requesting a review of the conceptual plan for the Newton Highlands Village Improvement Project. Is that enough? Does anybody want to understand why it's late filed? Commissioner Sullivan said that they would like a discussion with the council about the conceptual plan before they're able to move to a final discussion of the final design. So in order to keep the ball rolling and still keep the funding in play, she asked for a conceptual plan discussion at this Wednesday's meeting. So that's why it's late filed.
Great. Thank you very much, Chair Albright. That all set?
And we just need to vote, or did we need to vote on that?
Pardon?
Did we?
I
Yeah, we
accept-
need to vote.
It is suspension of the rules. It's been accepted on the docket.
Okay, thanks.
Chair Gentile for Finance, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Report begins on page 239. First item to report is 256-25. For honor the mayor requesting authorization to appropriate and expend the sum of $152,255 from the Energy Stabilization Fund to fund a LED lighting project at the Newton Education Center. This was approved 7-0. Next item, 274-25, the Community Preservation Committee recommending appropriation of $2,154,544 in Community Preservation Act funding. And then there is a breakdown of where the money will be split between two accounts. And this item was also approved by a vote of 8-0. At this point, I need to request a suspension of the rules to report on docket item 275-25, which is taken up earlier this evening, for which there is no written report.
All in favor of suspending the rules, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Go ahead, please, Counselor Gentile.
Docket item 275-25 is Council Laredo, Kalis, and Krinsman requesting an amendment to section 4-21B of the City of Newton ordinances to set the salary for the city clerk of the council It was taken up this evening. I'll give you the short version. A motion was made to approve the item, and the motion passed by a vote of 7-1, and I would move the report.
Thank you, Counselor Gentile. We've been joined by Counselor Block online, Counselor Danberg, Chair Danberg for real property reuse.
Thank you, Mr. President. There is no report tonight, but item number 3624 is on second call after it was postponed to a date certain of October 20th today. Thank you.
Thank you. So we are going to call the roll on first call. I'm going to then entertain a motion to suspend, I think that's the right term, our meeting, or go into recess, excuse me. We'll let Program and Services convene. Once Program and Services is done, we'll reconvene for second call. Ms. Flynn, go ahead, please.
Counselor Albright,
Aye.
Counselor Baker,
Aye.
Counselor Bigsby,
Aye.
Counselor Block,
Aye.
Counselor Danberg,
Aye.
Counselor Downs,
Aye.
Counselor Farrell,
Aye.
Counselor Gentile,
Aye, except for item 275-25, for which I vote no.
Counselor Getz,
Aye.
Counselor Greenberg,
Aye.
Counselor Grossman,
Aye.
Counselor Humphrey,
Aye.
Counselor Kalis,
Aye.
Counselor Kelly,
Aye.
Counselor Kritzman, Counselor Leary,
Aye.
Counselor Lipoff,
Aye.
Counselor Lobovitz, Counselor Lucas,
Aye.
Counselor Maliki,
Aye, with the exception of 25025, 29625, and 29725, on which
Counselor Mickley,
Aye.
Counselor Oliver,
Aye, with the exception of item 29725, for which I vote no.
Counselor Wright,
Aye, with the exception of 297-25, which I vote no.
President Laredo,
Aye.
the first call passes 23 with one absent, except for item 275-25, which passes 22-1, with item 250-25 passes 22-1, and items 297-25 passing 21-2.
Right. Do I have a motion to go into recess, please, by Counselor Lucas, seconded by Counselor Lipoff? All in favor, we'll do this in a voice vote. Please say aye. Aye. All right. We are now going to turn this over to Vice Chair Humphrey to convene the Programs and Services Committee.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. President. So as we talked about very briefly earlier this evening, we're taking up an item that had been voted by a prior council. We're considering it again so that the legislature can potentially act on it. This is a request from the administration to take this up again. I apologize for not being there in person, but I can't get back from South Boston fast enough to be able to be there in person for this. So just try to remember to speak into the microphone if you are in the room. So this is item 315-25, requesting a reaffirming of a home rule petition. Her Honor the Mayor requesting the City Council reaffirm its vote from April 2022 that approved a home rule petition to extend the residential boundary for uniformed personnel working in the police and fire departments from 15 to 35 miles. My recollection from having been on the committee at the time was that I think maybe a couple of us abstained on it in committee. And then I voted no in the full council, but that's okay. I don't know, are we anticipating hearing a presentation on this item again? Does anybody know? Because I hadn't heard that we were.
I don't think so.
Okay. So again, I think the basis of that is that they're saying the materials are already there and that it had been discussed by a prior council, but certainly I'm more than willing to hear debate and discussion on this. The reason they're, I think, trying to get rolling on this again now is because it might have some effect on the process for searching for a new police chief, but I think there's other reasons that they had articulated at the time. Again, the core thing here is that there's sort of a radius where the police and senior officers in the command structure can be located residentially. And the point that I raised back in 2022 was, and I think others raised this as well, was that 35 miles does extend into Rhode Island, Connecticut, and New Hampshire. So that is starting to be a pretty wide net. But anyway, that's my update on what I remember from that discussion. Does anybody have any, if someone in the room can maybe call on people, because I can't obviously see if you have your hand up.
Counselor Laredo?
So I'm not on the committee, colleagues, but this is an important item. As was explained a moment ago, we had passed a couple of years ago a request for home rule petition to expand the distance within which a police chief can live from the city. We did that so we could make sure that we had an expansive pool of candidates. So if there was, for example, a terrific candidate who happened to live 20 miles from the city, that person would not be precluded from applying or have to move if they were appointed to the job. The state has requested an updated vote from us, essentially ratifying or reaffirming what we previously did. I want to be crystal clear. This does not mean we're going to hire an outside candidate. This does not mean we're going to hire someone who lives further away than the 15 miles, but it does increase our ability to broaden our candidate pool, which I think all of us should agree, I hope we do, is critically important so that whomever we choose as the next police chief in the city, we are drawing from as broad a pool of candidates as possible. Again, this is not detrimental to anybody who's an internal candidate at all. It simply allows us to have a broader candidate pool. And I would urge us to approve this quickly tonight so that the legislature can go forward with the home rule petition and we can continue our police chief search, which is already underway. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. And before I call on anybody else that might have their hands up from the council, I note that we've been joined by Mr. Temple from the Law Department, Mr. Yo, our Chief of Operations, and Ms. P.Z. O'Brien from HR. I assume that they are, in fact, going to make a presentation, which is what I was hoping for. I think we just got rolling a little faster on this than they might have been anticipating. So I don't know, Ms. P.Z. O'Brien, did you want to talk about this a little?
Thank you, Counselor. I apologize. I was in some sort of other waiting room, but
No problem.
but I was elevated, so thank you. I was not intending on a presentation, but to make myself available for any questions. Chief McMains, who wanted to speak to this as well, is at the International Association of Chiefs of Police Conference. So I did speak to him as well as members of our administration, and have my own personal thoughts. Of course, I don't think I could add anything other than what President Laredo added, except for one piece, because everything he said is what's on my mind and our mind. But the one piece I would add is that we have negotiated the mileage to 35 miles for our union members. And we do try to create a pipeline for future leadership within our police officers union and our superior officers union. And one of the challenges with having a different negotiated range for travel is you could have an exceptional captain within your ranks or lieutenant within your ranks who has now, grew up in Newton, but maybe moved, where their spouses or family or friends might be, and then finding themselves having to relocate because they are 16 miles away from Newton. We wouldn't want that to be a detriment. We've also done a lot of work when it comes to diversity, and we'd like to have that broader range to be able to recruit more candidates. And as we struggle with filling positions, especially at leadership levels in police and fire throughout the Commonwealth, a lot of communities are doing what we're doing to be proactive to address that and not have anything unintentionally bind our ability to recruit talent. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
All right, thank you. And Mr. Yo, I don't know if you had any comments. I know you had presented a few years ago on this, but I think we're all set, right? All right, cool. Counselor Oliver, if you wouldn't mind just again checking around the room in person to see if there's anybody to call on there.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks. Counselor Lobovitz?
Just a question, since I wasn't involved in this in the past, and I'm assuming there's good reason, but is there ever a situation where the police chief has to be on site in an emergency and has to get here in a certain amount of time that would be precluded by needing to travel a very long distance? Thank you.
I'd be happy to answer that one. There's always circumstances where we would want our police chief to be available, but one of the reasons why this 15-mile radius, which actually was increased from 10 miles back in 1978, is a bit outdated, is today we have just incredible response technology, advanced dispatch systems, GPS routing, and rapid alert communications and things like that. Distance going beyond the 15 miles, we don't see as a detriment. And our former police chief and our current chief, Chief McMains, I spoke to both of them about this, and they found that, it wasn't a detriment in any way. They have a wonderful system in place with our captains at all times, and can do a wonderful job policing even from the distance and get to Newton in time to address anything they might need.
Thank you.
Great. All right, well, look at this. Counselor O'Leary.
Thank you very much. I certainly understand the reasoning behind it, but I was wondering, Ms. Pizzi O'Brien, if are other communities, do they have a similar mileage? This is consistent with what some of our neighboring communities are doing?
Yes, absolutely. I can't say for certain because I don't have that data in front of me, but when we did look at this for the first time it came to you back in 2022, we did do a review of that. There are some larger communities like Boston that have their own, local rules on residency. Boston actually is quite unique in that way. But other larger communities and neighboring communities have extended beyond the 15 miles. I can't say for sure all of them at this moment, but I know we did a study that showed that this certainly was a rapid discussion.
Thank you.
Counselor Maliki.
Yes, I just wanted to understand why what we did in 2022 expired, and what we're doing tonight does that have a fixed duration?
I think Jonah could probably answer that the best. And I see him. There we go.
Yes, I can answer that question, Counselor. So the reason it expired was purely because of a rule of the state legislature, which says that local approvals only last for the following term of the state legislature. So we were contacted by Representative Schwartz's office in the last couple of weeks and was told that we needed to reaffirm the vote and to get them that as soon as possible so that they can continue on with their consideration and approval of the home rule petition, which I understand is near its completion.
Okay, so what we do tonight would be good through the this current term of the state legislature and the next current term of the state legislature? Is that how it works?
That is my understanding, although the hope is certainly that it won't need to last that long because they will approve it soon after this vote is reaffirmed.
Okay, and then we're done doing it, and that one is good for so the issue was that it took too long for them to get to the home rule petition?
Yeah,
Okay,
it just expired
Correct.
before they acted on our approval.
okay, thank you very much.
Correct.
Great. I just have one simple clarification as well. I'm in full support of this. I'm just curious why we are clarifying uniformed officers as who are we excluding, or perhaps is everyone else already at this threshold and now we're catching up with uniformed employees?
I can answer that one, Counselor. So the term uniformed would be for our uniformed officers that are subject to this particular law. So the Mass General Law that sets the 15 miles is for uniformed personnel. So until such time that we either do what we're doing here or negotiate something different with our unions, which we did do. So the 15 miles does not apply to our unions because we have negotiated that 35 miles. That's what would apply. So the term uniformed personnel is for those wearing a uniform and subject to that particular law.
All right, that's great. Thank you. I see no other hands in the chamber.
Okay, well, I'd be interested to have a motion at this point. As I said earlier, I'll probably just stick with my prior vote on this, but I understand the rationale here. I just think 35 is kind of a big jump from 15. But anyway, if there's someone that wants to make a motion
Yep,
to
we have a
approve this
motion.
item.
So moved.
All right. Believe I heard Counselor Lobovitz loudest there. Any further discussion on the motion? If not, I'd say all those in favor, please raise your hand and then have Counselor Oliver count in the chamber and I'll count online.
I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is just programs and services, right? Or full council?
Yeah, just programs and services.
Okay, great. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right, in the room? So I've got 5 yeses, 5 yeas in the room. I have 1 no from Counselor Humphrey. Are there any abstentions?
Well, I'm going to abstain, I guess.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're an abstain, my fault. And there are no no's in the room.
Okay, and then online, I think maybe one other counselor hasn't voted yet.
Yeah, I'm voting yes. Sorry.
Okay.
Raising my hand now.
So is that 7-0 to 1? Did I count that right?
0-1, yeah.
Okay.
So that'll be 6-0-1 then.
Or is it 6 or 7?
6 yeas.
Oh,
There's
okay.
1 absent. Counselor Krinsman's not here. And
Ah,
one
right,
abstention.
yes. Thank you. Okay, well, I believe that concludes the business of this committee, and then we can return to the full council shortly on this same channel. Thank you.
Colleagues, we're going to resume with second call, but Ms. Flynn has a slight correction on the votes on first call.
The vote for first call for item 297-25, it was 20 yeas, 3 nays, and 1 absent.
All right. We are going to turn to second call, and I'm actually going to try to go a little bit out of order here. And we're going to take up the programs and services item we just heard first. In order that we hear this at the same time tonight, because it was docket tonight, I'm going to ask for a suspension of the rules to allow us to hear this evening on second call. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Vice Chair Humphrey, would you report out the item, please?
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, as I'm sure everyone knows, Programs and Services Committee met just moments ago earlier this evening to take up docket item number 315-25, requesting a reaffirming of a home rule petition. This is again related to the residential boundaries for uniformed personnel in the police and fire departments, raising that from 15 to 35 if the legislature approves. And that item was approved earlier tonight in committee by a vote of 6-0 to 1. And that concludes the report on this item.
Thank you, Vice Chair Humphrey. Ms. Flynn, would you call the roll, please, on this item?
Counselor Albright,
Aye.
Counselor Baker,
Aye.
Counselor Bigsby,
Aye.
Counselor Block,
Aye.
Counselor Danberg,
Aye.
Counselor Downs,
Aye.
Counselor Farrell,
Aye.
Counselor Gentile, Counselor Getz,
Aye.
Counselor Greenberg,
Aye.
Counselor Grossman,
Aye.
Counselor Humphrey,
Nay.
Counselor Kalis,
Aye.
Counselor Kelly,
Aye.
Counselor Krinsman, Counselor Leary,
Aye.
Counselor Lipoff,
Aye.
Counselor Lobovitz,
Aye.
Counselor Lucas,
Aye.
Counselor Maliki,
Aye.
Counselor Mickley,
Aye.
Counselor Oliver,
Aye.
Counselor Wright,
Aye.
President Laredo.
Aye.
The motion passes with 22 yeas, 1 nay, and 1 absent.
Great. We have 3 items still on second call. The first one, I'm going to recognize the Chair of the Zoning and Planning Committee, 2825. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, colleagues. So this item is one that has been in the committee for a considerable period of time. We actually had 2 public hearings on it, the one most recent and then earlier in the year. And this is cooked a long time before us, but I recognize that it may be relatively new to other members of the council, especially those on finance who don't meet at this time. And I want to acknowledge at the outset that if I had been had my wits about me, I would have consulted the Land Use Committee leadership at least before we got to a final decision on this matter, because there is an element that does involve land use in the ultimate report, specifically special permit relief. And I need to apologize to the chair and the vice chair and other members of that committee for not having had the wit about me to do it. But here we are. I hope that on reflection, you would still agree that this is a worthy decision for the council to make tonight. And I will not argue the case, but I will try and explain it and then reserve time to speak on the matter if necessary. Because this is a zoning amendment, it does require 16 affirmative votes. This is not a housing-related item in the conventional sense that it has been interpreted, but we are advised by the law department. So this is important for all of us to support if you possibly can. But let me explain it. One of the things we've tried to do in the most recent decisions of the Zoning and Planning Committee is to append to the actual report, which you all have access to it, an additional explanation of what we have done. And I'd ask the clerk if she could just pull that up so that you could see it, because it may not have been as obvious to you as an attachment to the report. But this was prepared by the Planning Department at my request, so everyone will understand what we're doing. There's an element that we did not include in the report that I'm going to ask the report be amended to include, and that is an effective date. And I'll explain that as we go forward, but the effective date of this, if it were to pass, is March 1st. So this is a summary of a long conversation that we undertook in committee that resulted in this particular response to a problem of several items we've carried along through the year about what to do about the concern in the city that there are large numbers of what amount to apparently oversized homes on the lots in which they occupy, creating a very uncomfortable streetscape and also potential difficulty for the abutters. Part of the challenge of this process is we're asking the planning department to look with our consultant Util at remedies that could improve what the built environment looked like without adversely affecting the property values of the properties themselves. And that analysis involved an analysis of tear downs over the city and looking at where problems existed. And on the first page, you can see it's somewhat dim photograph, but this is a parcel on Center Street, which occupies almost 81% of the lot. This is permissible because our setbacks are such that they set some distance between the properties which are adjacent, but not essentially control how much of the frontage can be occupied. And after a good deal of analysis, which I won't take you through in this conversation, our consultant came to the conclusion that what appeared to be an optimal ratio would be a 60% ratio. But applying that uniformly across the city seemed to be unwise because there were some smaller lots that we wanted to try and make sure we took care of, or strange shaped lots that don't exactly fit the standard rectangular shape. And so we created some exemptions, smaller lots, smaller than 50 feet in width. And we also were concerned that we not have a situation where we were adversely affecting the adaptive reuse of properties. So if you could go to the next slide, I'll just show you another example. These are properties that, if the proposal passed, would not be able to be built in the current configuration, but you can see how much of the lots they occupy, and the question is how to make that work. So go to the next slide. So this is basically what we're adding. We're adding a facade ratio to the zoning that says within the setbacks, you can use up to 60% of the frontage and site the building however you like, because we're not trying to prevent you from using the full lot, but don't use all of it in from one side to the other. And this produces, we hope, a building envelope that will be less imposing to the streetscape and less imposing to the abutters. Can you go to the next slide, please? So this is the how you analyze what is the property front line, and for corner lots, you would use the principal lot. And so you would just measure the width of the property from side to side, and then it would be 60%. But one of the things, again, in the adaptive reuse process, we wanted to make sure that there were still opportunities. So go to the next slide, please. So buildings on lots with less than 50% are exempt, and also buildings with less than 1.5 stories of an addition, because we, again, you saw in those earlier slides, we were concerned about the taller buildings, not something that was relatively lower in impact, both on the streetscape and on the abutters. Can you go to the next slide, please? So this is an example of these exemptions of less than 1.5 story or a narrow lot. So we're trying to preserve opportunity for as many places as we can, but respond to those three building types you saw at the very beginning. And continue, please. So one other dimension of this, we thought, okay, part of the problem is that the facade is so imposing. If there's something like the garage ordinance where we have a setback opportunity available without requiring the full impact of the ordinance, can we do that? And so it says that a residential front elevation does not include any exterior wall or building more than 20 feet behind the frontmost exterior wall. You go to the next slide, please. And this is an example visually of what they have in mind, so that if somebody really does need to go the whole distance, but is willing to set it back, the imposition on the streetscape and potentially on the butters is less severe. Okay, and go to the next slide, please. And then finally, we recognize there are a lot of buildings in the city that may be non-conforming. We want to allow those people, those owners, to continue to develop their property or add to it where it's necessary. So we've recommended it adding to our de minimis section of the ordinance. Remember, this is something that does not require a special permit, but can be done as a right, to allow up to 10% of the width where a residential front facade is non-conforming. Okay, I think that's that on the slides. Oh yes, this is important. We were concerned that even with all of these various exemptions, there might be situations for good cause where, in fact, there ought to be an exception made. And so we did provide for a special permit opportunity in this case, but we hope that the relative range of exceptions is great enough so that these will not be a floodgate of special permit applications to the council. But that was our thinking involved in that. And then finally, I go to the next slide. Is that it? This is the actual text. It's attached to the ordinance. It's too small to read, but it's in the report, but with comments explaining it. And then one portion that is not in these slides is the effective date. As it indicated, the planning department had worked with us on this. And in the case of the retaining wall ordinance and in the case of the ordinance where we changed how you measure height, remember we changed the measurement of height from the finished grade to the previous to the original grade, we provided an effective date into the future. The normal effective date for a zoning amendment, which is occurred with our accessory apartment ordinance, was that it's the date of the first notice of the public hearing, which is already passed. And we recognize there are people in the city who have expectations of carrying forward with a project and would like to see them finish that out. So in the conversation with the planning department, I had asked the commissioner to give his recommendation. He originally had said January 1st, which is well over 2 months from now. But upon reflection, after an inquiry from one of our colleagues, I asked him to think again, and he came back with March 1st as an effective date, which applies to building permits or special permits issued after that date. So it's a good 4.5 months from the council decision tonight that the ordinance would become effective. The challenge is you want to have an effective date that's close enough so we don't encourage people to go build the kind of buildings that you saw at the beginning, but also far enough out so that people who have reasonable expectations of doing something can finish up what they've already started. Grant you that one of the concerns raised is that you can't predict what the city council will do with a special permit, but I have great confidence in the land use committee and our colleagues to make that decision. But again, I have to apologize to the leadership that I did not raise that issue with them before we got to this conversation this evening. So that is the substance of what we're doing, and I hope it's clear enough for the report. And at some point, I would like to be recognized on the item, but I'll move the report.
Thank you. I have Counselor Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, President Emeritus Baker. I appreciated your call this afternoon. Despite that, and I see that this has been before ZAP, one of those many items that's been going on and on and on and on. I appreciate that, but I still have concerns around approving it tonight. Part of that may stem from my own less than adequate knowledge of the proposal until this weekend, but it seems to me that the current wording and scope doesn't consider a majority of Newton lots, smaller lots, particularly irregularly shaped corner lots, though that's partly addressed in cul-de-sac lots and so on. It appears to present the need to build further back into the site, which will impact rear and side rear neighbors more. It creates the requirement for a special permit in some situations where currently it could be done by right. This makes the process lengthier, more expensive, and convoluted to the detriment of residential property owners. It also adds more smaller residential applications to the growing list of land use docket items. We're trying to streamline that rather than expand it to make it simpler and faster for homeowners. This makes it much harder for owners on homes on smaller lots, the less valuable properties who have to endure more financial consequences for permitting and resale value. These are often the very homes we're hoping to encourage people to stay in by building an addition, including to house elderly parents and growing families. We've gotten inputs, or at least I have certainly, I think the whole council has, from residents, attorneys, and architects who are all saying they're feeling like they're being tied and constricted by this over the weekend. But as Councilor Baker, President Emeritus Baker suggested, the Land Use Committee can be a help in crafting zoning changes like this, and I do suggest that ZAP reach out to us going forward on this and other items that affect us, where our experience downstream about the consequences and ramifications of zoning changes is dealt with. We could be collaborators and not just the end users, and I hope that's how we do it going forward. Thank you. So
Thank you.
I'm not in support of this tonight.
Counselor Albright.
Thank you. First, thank you to Councilor Baker for are managing to change the delay, the start date from January 1st to March 1st, because I remember when we did the garage ordinance, a lot of people were in the process of having their garages approved. And it was better, having time to clear the deck and get all that through, things that are already in process is a good idea, because we had a mess with the garage ordinance when we didn't do that. So I'm going to support this, but we really have no idea if this is going to bring the desired outcome that we're looking for. There are designers and architects, as Councilor Leary suggested, that are concerned that we're going to be slowing down new growth, which is important to our tax base. But you know, we just don't know. I had asked for a look back provision, but was told it was unnecessary. So that in the new term, I'm going to docket an item that we get information by March of 2027. I think that would be about a year of what kind of special permits came in. Did we reduce tear downs? What kinds of do we have the correct exemptions? We exempted with the discussion, we had a discussion about narrow lots and how narrow of a lot should be exempted from the 60% rule. And we settled on a number. Is that the right number? I have no idea. So we'll learn a lot from 1 year, and I hope we'll get a report back from the planning department on what this has done to development in Newton, whether it's had the effect that we're hoping for. But I think it's probably a good place to start and have that discussion. Thanks.
Thank you. Counselor Wright, then Baker.
So this change isn't, it may reduce a few tear downs, but that was not the aim. It was for these huge houses for tear downs that didn't take up the whole entire lot. And that's was the main direction for this. And if someone wants to add on, we have a de minimis of 10%, plus if it's 1.5 stories, then it doesn't count when it's an add-on. So it's more what's going to be built there for a tear down. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Baker.
Thank you. I said most of what I said, and I appreciate the comments of the Chair of Land Use. I do think, though, that this is an opportunity for the council to respond to the concerns we've heard in the community about the nature of our built environment and the oversized appearance of buildings, especially those new construction, as you saw. I think we can learn from this experience. I certainly think I can as a matter of process, but I hope that the council will support this because I do think it will enhance the quality of the built environment in the city, respond to the concerns people have. We heard from some building professionals who said they weren't wild about this, but they would not oppose it. And we've tried to respond to the pipeline problem that Councilor Albright brought to our attention, and I appreciate that. So I think this is as good as we're going to get at this stage, and I hope that members of the council will support it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, I have Councilor Block, followed by Lucas and Getz.
Thank you, Mr. President. I didn't quite follow the special permit provision. Does the special permit allow the total waiving of this 60%?
Councilor Block, is that a question through the president to the chair of?
Yeah,
Zoning and
yes,
Planning?
yes, it is. Thank you.
Go ahead, please, Councilor Baker.
Turn on my mic. Yes, basically a special permit is available as the planning department recommended it, so that if there were a situation which required a change on an individual basis that wasn't part of the exemption, someone could come in and seek one. So yes.
Go ahead, please, Councilor.
Well, so that I mean, I'm struggling with the idea that there is no limit on what the special permit can approve. Usually we have limits. And I wouldn't want homeowners or developers to start to think that this can just be waived through a special permit process entirely. Did the committee discuss a special permit that would allow a 65% coverage, for example? Did you have any discussion around a metric like that?
That's another question through the president, Counselor Block,
Yes.
Counselor Baker.
Yes, Mr. President, we did. We actually talked about that specifically with the department, the planning department, in the context of trying to figure out if we wanted to put an upset, what would it be? And we decided that we didn't want to put an upset limit at this stage because the special permit criteria, as the planning department pointed out, has within it both that the use and structure is appropriate to the lot. There are all of the regular pre-existing zoning controls for height, setbacks, floor area ratio, and so forth. So this is just one element. And as Councilor Albright indicated, we're not quite sure how the ultimate outcome will be, but we think it will improve the quality of the city. And we want to give people the flexibility to come forward if they need assistance. But that's where we did discuss that in committee.
Counselor Block, do you wish to offer any further comment?
No, thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Counselor Lucas and Getz.
Thank you. So the first thing that I want to say is in the report, it says it was approved by ZAP 7-0. How many of those do we have on these big items that on zoning? So I'm inclined to support it on that if ZAP was able to reach a consensus after many meetings. I had a question regarding the January 1st to March 1st start time, but Councilor Albright answered that for me, so thank you. And then the other question I had, and maybe through you to Councilor Baker, does this apply to tear downs where you're building new, or does it apply to additions to homes that are already standing?
A question through the president of the chair of zoning and planning.
Yes, it applies to both. And we had a conversation in committee, and one of the reasons that we took so long is that we had tried to make a distinction in the draft, if we could say, well, this applies only to tear downs and not to something else. And only, but we found that the drafting part of that and the policy that it represented, and the law department and the planning department spent a considerable amount of time on this, said, look, you need to have like regular zoning controls like setbacks, FAR, so forth. We don't make a distinction between whether they're tear downs or not. Their distinctions are not made on the basis of whether property has been torn down before it's rebuilt. So that's one of the reasons that the shape of the exemptions has occurred the way it has, including the special permit, because we did want to protect the adaptive reuse, but try and reach as much as possible the excesses that you saw on the first slide.
Okay, thank you. I'm inclined to support this. I do think we should all keep our eye on this, just as it relates to additions or add-ons to existing homes, and if necessary, we may have to go back to amend it, but I'm gonna support the item. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Lucas. Counselor Getz, Lipoff, Leary.
Okay, I just wanted to rise in support of this item and to explain that we spent quite a bit of time in zoning and planning discussing the item. We also too relied heavily on the work that UTIL had done, just in comparative of tear downs and then what was rebuilt. So there's quite a bit of conformity in terms of existing housing stock with the 60%. So that's a benefit to the community. And then I also would like to suggest that we actually did quite a bit of revisiting of many standards, that this doesn't apply to any lot that's has a frontage of less than 50 linear feet. And to Counselor Block's concern, I too was concerned that this was going to be a valve or a way for people to circumvent through the special permit process. So I do want to keep an eye on that. But generally, I'm quite supportive of this, and I would suggest that this is the pared down version. But I think it's effective enough that I would like to see it implemented.
Thank you, Counselor Cat. Counselor Lipoff and then Leary.
When I first heard about this, initially I just heard about the 60% of frontage for the facade of the home. I started doing some numbers knowing that it didn't apply under 50 feet, so I did 51 feet. So the facade can be 30 feet, 30.6. And I started working some different plot plans and thought it was a little crazy. And then when you read what you've done with an additional 20-foot setback added onto the original setback, and if you can do that, then you don't have to deal with the 60%. That to me was reasonable. When I learned about the 1.5-story addition that you can do on either side, to exceed that 60% as well, if you keep it to 1.5, well, that speaks to what we're trying to do, which is the massing from the street. Now, all of that is great, and I think it's enough to vote for it at this time. The foreshadowing on this one is corner lots and strangely shaped lots. It's going to be an issue. It's not going to make any sense. It's going to give some of the attorneys in this town a little extra work to do, because we're going to have things coming in front of us to land use. And I've been around long enough, a bunch of us have, to know where this is going to go. We're going to implement this. It's going to work for some. It's going to be terrible for some others. And we're going to learn from it. And we're going to make some amendments to it and make it better in the future.
Thank you, Counselor Lipoff. Counselor Leary and then Counselor Farrell, and then seeing no one else, will call this.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I've been leaning towards the comments of Counselor Lipoff, which was very eloquently said. I was frankly very encouraged to see something substantial come out of zoning and planning. They certainly do their due diligence, and this has been well discussed. I'm certainly aware of Counselor Kelly concerns. But again, I think this is a little bit of an experiment, and we would have an opportunity to reevaluate it. So I'm planning to support it at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Leary. Counselor Farrell, then Grossman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just would like to take this moment to compliment the Zoning and Planning Committee. I think they've done incredible and extensive investigations into this issue. And my perception is a little bit myopic because I'm so focused on Ward 8. But when I look at the number of houses in Ward 8 that get torn down or expanded and totally change the sense of the neighborhoods and the streets, I'm hoping that this will go a long way to helping neighborhoods retain their character and still allow for some pretty good-sized buildings. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Grossman.
Thank you, Mr. President. So when I first read this, I thought it seemed overly restrictive, and I was listening to see if I could be convinced otherwise, but I find Counselor Kelly's comments the most compelling. So while it appears to me that this is going to go forward, I'm just not prepared to support it tonight, but I do appreciate the efforts and work, and we'll see what happens. Thank
Great,
you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to be heard? Counselor Maliki.
Yes. So I watched a fair amount of the discussions of this in committee, when finance ended early, and I could catch some of it. And I was not really enthusiastic about this measure because of feeling that it was really not going to have any effect. I mean, the planning department themselves said, we don't expect it to have any effect on tear downs, and I'm interested in doing something that will have an effect on tear downs. So it was actually painful to watch the amount of time that was spent on something that I did not expect to have much of an effect. But I think the benefit of having the less sort of overwhelming frontage on a good number of lots is, now that it's done, I think it's worth supporting for that reason. And the number of letters we got opposing it, the flurry in the last day or two, makes me actually feel a little better that maybe it will do something. So I'll be supporting it.
Thank you. Counselor Kalis, I think you're going to get the last word tonight.
Thank you. I think, Counselor Kelly really hit on, a nerve for me. And while I did vote for this in committee, I'm thinking this needs a little bit more discussion. So I won't be supporting it actually in this case. Thank you.
All right, let's call the roll on this, please. Remember, a yes or an aye vote is in favor of the change. A no or a nay vote is negative. It needs 16 votes to pass. Go ahead, please.
Counselor Albright,
Aye.
Counselor Baker,
Aye.
Counselor Bigsby,
Aye.
Counselor Block,
Aye.
Counselor Danberg,
Aye.
Counselor Downs,
Counselor Downs?
Yeah, that's an aye.
Counselor Farrell,
Aye.
Counselor Gentile, Counselor Getz,
Aye.
Counselor Greenberg,
No.
Counselor Grossman,
No.
Counselor Humphrey,
Aye.
Counselor Kalis,
No.
Counselor Kelly,
No.
Counselor Kritzman, Counselor Leary,
Aye.
Counselor LeBoff,
Aye.
Counselor Lobovitz,
Aye.
Counselor Lucas,
Aye.
Counselor Maliki,
Aye.
Counselor Mickley,
Aye.
Counselor Oliver,
Aye.
Counselor Wright,
Aye.
President Laredo.
Aye.
The motion passes with 18 yeas, 5 nays, and 1 absent.
All right, thank you all. We have 2 more items to deal with on second call. The first is a land use item that was previously before us and then postponed to a date certain. I'm going to recognize the chair of the Real Property Reuse Committee, Counselor Danberg, to see if there's anything to add here. And then I believe there may be a motion or in order here. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. On the 18th of September, item number 3624, Real Property Reuse voted to move the properties and the buildings on those properties at 169 Grove Street and 136 Hancock Street, along with 10,000 square feet of vacant land from the building department to the school department. The main reason that we made this decision was that the properties are located adjacent to the Williams School, and this school has very little surrounding property. The committee felt that since these former Walker Center properties were available, that this is really a unique opportunity to add much needed space to a school that very much needs it. At the last city council meeting, the item was put on second call because some felt that more time was needed in order to determine whether the school department was ready to accept these properties because of their maintenance requirements, or would it be better to send them back to Real Property Reuse and leave them in the hands of public buildings where they are right now, because public buildings would need to maintain them anyway. So if it is the will of the council to do this, it would first require that we waive the requirement that it vote the item out within 60 days of receiving the report from Real Property Reuse, which the city council can do, but it requires a 2/3 vote of those present and voting. Now, once we were to do this, we would then need a motion to send the item back to committee. It's also important that we remember that the ordinance does not prescribe a time period by which the Real Property Reuse Committee has to make a recommendation to the city council after it closes the public hearing, which we have done. We have closed the public hearing. This means that once the item is sent back to Real Property Reuse, the committee does not have a deadline by which they need to make their recommendation. There is no deadline. Also, when the item is sent back to the Real Property Reuse Committee, it does not restart the whole process over again, and it does not require a second or a new JPG either. After that, the city council would have to vote to suspend the rules to carry this item over to the next term, and it would be added to the list of items that the city council votes to carry over at the end of the term. And with that, Councilor Gentile, I believe, is the one who would like to make a motion or two. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Chair Danberg. Councilor Gentile, recognize you for the purpose of making the motion.
Thank you. And actually, there are two motions that I would like to make tonight. Counselor, the chair has just made an excellent summary of what has been going on and what we hope to see in the future. A few of us took a tour of the buildings recently, and I think that everybody is on the same page. And all we're trying to do is to give all parties involved, the new city council, the new mayor, the superintendent of schools, and the school committee, more time to study this and figure out what the best possible recommendation is. And we're not there yet because there's just a number of unanswered questions, starting with the very serious financial questions that if the school department, school committee were to accept this land and buildings, how are they going to pay for, the maintenance that's going to need to be done? So, and then there were several other questions. So all we're trying to do tonight is just give more time to the city council, and as I said, everyone else involved, to come to an informed decision. So the first motion, and I want to assure you that we have been working closely with the law department and specifically Attorney Lee. And what I'm going to be proposed tonight is what Attorney Lee has recommended, in order to achieve keeping this within the council's jurisdiction, at least as far as making a recommendation. So the first thing that Attorney Lee suggested is a motion which I am making now to waive the 60-day requirement. As Chair Danberg mentioned, once this is voted out by the JAPG to the city council, we're supposed to act within 60 days. And my best information on that is that is approaching, I think it's the middle of November. So we have the authority to waive that 60-day requirement. So that would be my first motion, to waive the 60-day requirement. And if that is hopefully successful, I'd like to be recognized. And again, based on what the law department is recommending to us, that we refer the item back to Real Property Reuse. And then the culmination of all of this will be a subsequent vote by the city council to suspend the rules to refer the item to the next council. And for those of you rightfully probably want to know what will happen in the meantime, it means it will just continue to sit with the building department. When we were together last week over at the site, the commissioner was asked about if he's, prepared to continue to maintain the buildings, especially through the winter months. And he has said he's expecting to, and he's confident that, you know, his department will be able to maintain the buildings through this winter while the future council works on the best possible recommendation. So with that, I'll make the motion to waive the 60-day requirement.
Do I have a second for that motion? Is that a second by Counselor Albright? I think I want to take a roll call vote on this motion, and the next one I think we can do on just a voice vote, okay? Because I want to have a clear record. Yes, Counselor Albright.
So if you remember, I put this on second call at our last meeting, and I think this is exactly the right outcome. In the interim, I asked for a tour to see the three houses, and the chair of real property and the three Ward 4 counselors came along with some city staff, Commissioner Morse. We were also joined by the head of the Newton Housing Authority. The houses are in pretty good shape. One of them is in very good shape, has been renovated. One of them needs a modest amount of work and the other one needs a little bit more. And I think that the chair of the Housing Authority felt that with a little bit of work, these could be homes for people while we're waiting to decide whether the school department needs them for the Williams School or not. The other thing that we have to take into consideration in this issue is the local housing historic commission, which came up during the meeting at the houses. And I don't think it's not common, let's put it that way, for a historic commission to allow these kinds of houses to be torn down. So that's something that has to be taken into consideration. I think, it's a pity that all that was thought about during the process where it was a real property reuse was making them into 20 units, 15 units, some large number of units when they're perfectly fine homes for a family, a low-income family right now without doing that much work. So, and as the school is waiting to decide what it needs with the Williams School. In the meantime, the 10,000 square feet wasn't part of this process. That could go to the schools next week or whenever that's worked out. So if they need that 10,000 square feet for additional playground space, that doesn't have to wait for anything because that wasn't part of the real property reuse process. So I'm going to support Councilor Gentile's motion. I think it's exactly what we need to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further to Counselor Lucas?
Thank you. I'm just a little unclear on the first motion that you want to make, the waiving of the 60 days. Can you explain that
Is that a
again?
question through the president?
Yes, it is.
Go ahead. I'm going to let Counselor Danberg, who is the chair of the committee, respond.
Thank you. The 60 days is part of the real property reuse ordinance process. In the ordinance that regulates how real property reuse operates, it says that if you get a report, you have to act on it within 60 days. And this is this is a reasonable provision because normally you want to move things along. So this time we know that we don't want to act within 60 days because this is a complicated issue that is going to take a considerable amount of time and certainly go into next term. We've got the assurance from the building department and Commissioner Morse that he's going to take care of it over the winter and until it gets decided what its at least short-term use is going to be. But we don't want to hobble ourselves by requiring that by the 18th of November, as Councilor Gentile has indicated, we have to make a decision. So therefore, we're going to waive that requirement.
So Counselor Gentile?
Councilor Lucas, let me just add one quick thing. If we don't act within 60 days, then the disposition of the property reverts to the mayor. And what many of us would like to see is to see this property stay under the control, at least for now, of the city council, and that's what that does.
Okay, any further discussion on this motion by Counselor Gentile, which has been seconded by Counselor Albright? Let's call the roll on this one, and then we'll do the next one to remand if this one passes by voice vote. Go ahead, please.
Counselor Albright,
Aye.
Counselor Baker,
Aye.
Counselor Bigsby,
Aye.
Counselor Block,
Aye.
Counselor Danberg,
Aye.
Counselor Downs,
Aye.
Counselor Farrell,
Aye.
Counselor Gentile, Counselor Getz,
Aye.
Counselor Greenberg,
Aye.
Counselor Grossman,
Aye.
Counselor Humphrey,
Aye.
Counselor Kalis,
Aye.
Counselor Kelly,
Aye.
Counselor Kritzman, Counselor Leary,
Aye.
Counselor Lipoff,
Aye.
Counselor Lobovitz,
Aye.
Counselor Lucas,
Aye.
Counselor Maliki,
Aye.
Counselor Mickley,
Aye.
Counselor Oliver,
Aye.
Counselor Wright,
Aye.
President Laredo.
Aye.
The motion passes with 23 yeas and 1 absent.
Okay, and now your second motion, Counselor Gentile.
Thank you, Mr. President. At this time, I would move that the item be referred back to the Real Property Reuse Committee.
Seconded by Counselor Albright. Let's do this in a voice vote, please. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it. It's remanded to the Real Property Reuse Committee. Thank you very much. We have our last item, which is a land use item. I'm going to recognize Chair of the Land Use Committee, Counselor Kelly.
Thank you again, President Laredo. The Land Use Committee met on September 7th on item 156-25, which was a request to allow ground floor residential use to allow 3 stories to exceed FAR and associated parking waivers at 1062 Beacon Street. This was perhaps the 3rd or 4th time this item was before us, and it was voted out favorably 6 to 1 to 1, 6 in favor, 1 opposed, 1 abstention. The project is a 4-unit proposal on a very constricted site, zoned business use 1, which requires a special permit and dimensional waivers due to ground floor use, which includes on-site protected parking for the residential units above. The site is abutting the parking lot of the Whole Foods at Four Corners and bounded on 2 sides by aqueducts. It's a transitional location between commercial and residential uses. FAR has been reduced from the previous meetings to 1.29, where 1.0 is by right allowed. The units are all elevator accessible. Neighbors spoke most in favor of the housing and design, with some concerned about the size and height. One person specifically would prefer 2.5 stories to 3 and potential parking congestion. And it has been put on second call.
Thank you, Chair Kelly. Counselor Lucas, you put this on second call.
Yeah, thank you. I put this on second call. It's a land use item, so you have to give a reason why you're voting against it, so I will. I had a feeling when this was first heard in committee, it was back in the spring. And I said something in the committee, which I'll repeat shortly. And one of my issues with this particular development is that this is housing in a business zone, so FAR applies as opposed to single family attached where it doesn't apply. This is one where the FAR is listed at 1.29, as Councilor Kelly just stated, down from 1.34. My issue with the FAR is that it's very, very misleading. I printed out the FAR worksheet, and the total FAR, again, is 1.29, but only 526 square feet of the first floor is counting towards the FAR, when the building footprint, essentially the first floor, is 4,300 square feet. So that means 13% of the first floor counts towards the FAR, but 87% of the first floor does not count to the FAR. It's very, very misleading, and the project is going to appear much bigger in person than how it presents on paper. And what I said in committee back in the spring is that it kind of feels like 20 Clinton Street all over again. Not that the developer is trying to deceive us, they aren't. It's just that it's going to appear much bigger in person than as it's being presented on paper. If you remember 20 Clinton Street, there were two different renderings, and one of them was extremely misleading. This one isn't misleading, but it's a little complicated, and it's going to make the project much, much bigger than how it should present. The other reason why I'm voting against the special permit is because, once again, we are taking a commercial zone, excuse me, a business zone, and putting all housing in it. And I think this is the third time this year we have done this. We had a project on Adams Street in Nonantum, the very first meeting of the year for land use, and we had one in Auburndale on the corner of River and Lexington, if I remember correctly. And I voted for those. I thought those were good projects. This one, you know, we're taking too many commercial lots and turning them into housing. And I would like to see mixed use or a commercial use there. So that's why I am voting against the special permit. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Lucas. Anyone else wish to be heard on this item? Counselor Getz, then Maliki.
Okay, I spent some time looking at this project. I know it well. It's abutting the entrance on Beacon Street into the Whole Foods. And that driveway into Whole Foods is constantly it's a very problematic intersection. It's, congested. Everybody is dodging. It's really a problematic intersection. But that's one consideration for this whole piece. I actually, in zoning and planning, we're trying to resolve this issue of a complete residential use of a BU1 lot, because they then jump into having dimensional standards that are inappropriate if it's 100% residential. It is a BU lot, but yet you look at it and you start doing the digest of it and you start seeing it's abutting the aqueduct. It's, rather than having an appropriate front setback, it's got 10 feet for the front setback. And the massing of this build is going to be significant on a corner where the egress into the Whole Foods is really problematic. So I, went back and I looked at the VCOD for the Four Corners area. It is not designated. It wasn't upzoned in that iteration. So for all those reasons, I am not supportive of this proposed bill. And the other piece of it was like, if in fact you're going to have a building of this massing, put it to the back of the lot, not to the front. And the parking spaces, it has 6 parking spaces for the 4 units. And I'm sort of thinking, okay, where are we going with allowing of this amount of on-site parking? So I'm not supportive.
Thank you, Counselor Getz. Counselor Maliki, then Danberg.
Thank you. So I agree with the concerns expressed by both Councilors Lucas and Getz. When we have a business zone parcel right next to Whole Foods, and that's being presented as a transition because it's turning into housing, that doesn't make any sense to me. I don't want to lose any more commercial space that we don't have to lose. I think a true transition would be a mixed use on this parcel, with some of the parking being used to support a ground floor business use. And doing anything other than that, I think we're just compounding the attrition of our commercial tax base. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Maliki. I have Counselor Danberg, Leary, Downs, Farrell, Kelly. Pardon? Oh, good. One less person speaking. I think that's probably all good for everybody. Go ahead, please, Counselor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was not going to speak on this item tonight because I am in favor of it. I don't have any problem with it. The abutters, the direct abutters, are also in favor of it. The developer has vetted this within the neighborhood, I think, very well. In fact, one of the abutters said that he was very happy that this building was going to be built, that this project was going to be built because it's going to help him and the other neighbors to get relief from the sounds of the traffic and the noise from the intersection. It also has more parking than I would have probably allowed, which just means that the neighbors are not concerned with cars being parked on the streets in the neighborhood. So I will be supporting this. It is in Ward 6.
Thank you, Counselor Danberg. Counselor Leary.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I'm on the Land Use Committee, and we discussed this in depth. This is not a perfect project. It was problematic. There was a big history here as well. But I want to put this in context. It is, the massing is, a little bit high, bigger than I would have wanted. But it's no Clinton Street. This is around trees. It's very distant from other properties. It's next to a Whole Foods parking lot and has the aqueducts behind it. So it's not impacting or overreaching other properties. In fact, many of the neighbors were in favor of it. It's been a residential home for many, many decades. It's currently deteriorating, and the residents would also like to see a new building put there. And it's also an elevator building. And we got many people who talked about how this was important for them to age in place. It's one of the very, very few. And there were a lot of emails in favor of it. I don't see how 6 parking spaces next to a Whole Foods lot is going to increase any of the traffic. In fact, it's keeping those streets off a busy Beacon Street where there's very little parking. So absolutely, I'm in favor of this. Is it my favorite? No, but that's what we have to do in land use sometimes. And in housing, feet on the street also helps our businesses. This is not a valuable spot to put commercial space. It should have been rezoned years ago. So I'll be voting for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Leary. Counselor Downs.
I won't repeat the comments of Counselor Danberg and Counselor Leary, which I agree with. The problem with this site is that what you're going to get there, because of the 2 aqueducts it abuts, is by necessity very, very limited. And there are some by right options, but they aren't buildable. So one of the reasons that despite the massing and despite the excessive parking, on which I agree, but it is what we require under our zoning, and the proponent building this 3-unit building thought they had enough things to ask for a special permit for without going after our parking minimums. But I agree. I don't think we should require 2 units per two parking spaces per unit. It increases the cost of housing. It increases massing. It increases the amount of traffic on the street. So I would be happy to work with Councillor Getz on reducing that minimum.
Just a reminder, Counselor Downs, this is 4 units, not 3. And there's
4
6
units, 6 parking spaces. It still meets, we're doing what we have to do. But and thank you for the correction. But the alternative to building this project is to build nothing, to basically let this rot until the price of land gets high enough that they could build something smaller. I'm not willing to watch that house deteriorate any further, and with the amount of neighborhood support there, I felt we ought to move forward on it. So I'm voting yes on this.
All right, thank you, Counselor Downs. I have Counselor Farrell, Oliver, and then seeing no one else, we're going to call a vote.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will just say that I think this is an excellent project. I don't think it overwhelms the neighborhood. When you look across the street, there's a very tall brick building. When you look down the street, there's a very large apartment building. If we're concerned about commercial space, I would encourage us all to look at the Beacon Street on the other side of Walnut that could use a lot of commercial development, it seems to me. I think this is a relatively handsome building for the neighborhood. It's a great transition from the commercial area into the residential area. I think it is a lot that will not be built on if we don't let this project go forward. The parking, I'm in and out of Whole Foods all the time. The parking is an issue. I mean, the traffic is an issue throughout that whole intersection, and people become aware of it and they learn to live with it, and they're very careful. I hope you would allow this project to go forward.
Thank you, Councilor Farrell. Councilor Oliver.
Great, thanks. I'll be as brief as I possibly can here. I actually don't have a massive issue with this particular project because of its location. I do have a problem with this project because of what we're actually gonna, I assume, green light here. There's an item in front of ZAP right now to prevent BU lots being used for 100% residential without forcing residential dimensional controls. In other words, it's too much massing on this lot for housing only. That's what our zoning actually tells us, and I'd like to actually align residential use to residential sizes of the structures, that is. With that said, I'll be voting against it, but again, I don't have a problem with the project itself because of where it's located, but on principle, that item that's in ZAP is mine, and I firmly believe that we need to fix this particular challenge. I'll leave it there.
Councilor Danberg, you're probably closed out of time, so go ahead.
Okay, just briefly, in response to Councilor Oliver's concerns, I think that this is a perfect example of what Councilor Albright was talking about when she said, we're going to have to look down the road, take another look at this and see what needs tweaking and where we could have an unintended consequence. This area, as Councilor Leary mentioned, this particular lot is sandwiched between two aqueducts. It happens to be a BU designation, but it probably should have been changed decades ago because it's not an appropriate location in this neck of the woods.
You're out of time, Councilor Danberg.
30 seconds.
All in favor of additional 1 minute for Councilor Danberg, please say aye. Aye, go ahead.
Thank you. Its highest and best use is really as residential and not as commercial. That'll conclude what I have to say.
All right. With that said, I don't see anything further. Let's call the roll. Ms. Flynn.
Mr. President.
Oh, I'm sorry. Councilor Baker.
I saw the renderings in the Land Use Committee, and I grant you it's a handsome building, but I am troubled by the point that Councilor Oliver raised, and Councilor Danberg, in effect, it seemed to me just reinforced it, that this property should be viewed with a residential lens as opposed to a commercial lens, and we are applying commercial FAR to a residential use, which I'm troubled by. So if I end up not supporting this, it's because of that item, but I would be glad to be educated by the Land Use Committee majority about why we should not be looking at this through a much more restrictive scale because of the residential use as opposed to commercial use.
Okay, with that, I think we are done with our discussion. Ms. Flynn, will you call the?
Mr. President, is this a majority or a two-thirds?
It is, am I correct? It's a majority. It's a majority vote because it's housing and the state law has changed in that regard. Okay? Councilor Maliki?
The state law apply when there's no affordable units? There's no affordable percentage? I thought it was 10% had to be affordable.
Ms. Flynn? Pardon?
I believe this is majority vote, but I could take a second to confer with the law department.
Do you want to take Counselor Baker?
My understanding is that it is a majority vote because of the housing purpose. It doesn't have to be affordable in order.
It's a majority vote only. I'm going to defer to Counselor Baker's expertise here, which was my sense as well. It doesn't matter if it's affordable housing is included or not. Housing under the new state law is by majority vote. Okay? Do you want to confer with the law department? We could take a recess if folks want for 2 minutes.
Mr. President, if the
Go
law
ahead.
department is available to confirm that, it would save trouble if the item doesn't pass for some reason because of the 2/3 requirement. I think.
Why don't we do this? We're going to take a 2-minute, and I mean 2-minute recess. We'll let Ms. Flynn call the law department. We'll confirm that it's majority vote, and then we will vote. Okay, no further discussion after that. We're in recess for 2 minutes. But don't go far. Colleagues, I know we've had a couple step out of the room. I've been advised by the clerk, acting clerk, that is a 2/3 vote, not a majority vote. It's required. So we'll wait till we have a full complement of folks. I know 1 or 2 stepped out. We're waiting on Counselor Kelly. We're still in recess, colleagues. Why is 2/3? All right, colleagues, we are back from recess. So turns out Counselor Malachy was correct. According to our law department, because this does not have an inclusionary unit in it, nor is in VCOD, of course, it's different. It requires a 2/3 vote. Okay, so that means we need 16 affirmative votes to approve this project. With that, we're going to call the roll. Ms. Flynn. I'm sorry, Counselor Gentile, forgive me.
Sorry, because I want to get out of here as much as you do, but anyway, just being honest. It's difficult. Counselor Oliver and Counselor Lucas, I think in particular, are spot on, and others, when you say that if it's a housing, if the use is housing, then you should have to comply to the housing guidelines. And that makes a lot of sense to me. But I'm really familiar with the lot, and I know how difficult it is. I had friends that used to live there, so I'm very familiar with it. So the bottom line, I think, for me is my colleague here to my left assures me that most of the people in the neighborhood supporting this, and I can understand what they're saying about the particular comment about how it'll improve their situation just by knocking down some of the noise. So for that reason, as much as I understand the argument of my other colleagues on the size and so forth, I guess I'm going to support it.
Thank you, Counselor Gentile. Is there anyone else, and I do not mean to rush anyone, but is anyone else wish to be heard? Okay, seeing none. Ms. Flynn, call the roll, please.
Counselor Albright,
Aye.
Counselor Baker,
No.
Counselor Bigsby,
Aye.
Counselor Block,
Aye.
Counselor Danberg,
Aye.
Counselor Downs,
Aye.
Counselor Farrell,
Aye.
Counselor Gentile, Counselor Getz,
No.
Counselor Greenberg,
Aye.
Counselor Grossman,
Aye.
Counselor Humphrey,
Aye.
Counselor Kalis, Counselor Kalis,
Aye.
Counselor Kelly,
Aye.
Counselor Krinsman, Counselor Leary,
Aye.
Counselor Lipoff,
Aye.
Counselor Lobovitz,
Aye.
Counselor Lucas,
No.
Counselor Maliki,
No.
Counselor Mickley,
Aye.
Counselor Oliver,
No.
Counselor Wright,
Aye.
President Laredo.
Aye.
The motion passes with 18 yeas, 5 nays, and 1 absent.
All right, Counselor Kelly, do I have a motion to adjourn? We are adjourned at 9:31 PM. Thank you all very